where did you make your start in winemaking, and then how have you gotten to the point you have?
Yeah, well, I started right out of college. I came to Phoenix. I was teaching humanities and sciences at a high school in Phoenix. And I started really getting interested in wine in college. And I was getting into the art and science of wine. And decided to take a summer off of teaching when I was here in Phoenix and work down with Kent Callaghan on his vineyard. That was back in 2000.
Wow.
So that was my first entry into the wine business.
What were you doing for Kent that first year?
What was I doing for him?
Yeah, if let's say somebody has never done that and Kent says, yes, come down and help me. What were your duties in the year 2000?
I was basically maintaining the canopy in the vineyard. So I was shoot thinning, a little bit of hedging, suckering, tying up shoots, that type of thing.
And that was your first introduction into the wine world, was with Kent?
It was, yep. Yeah, so I worked with him that summer, and that's when I was first introduced to Arizona wine too, and realized that there's something special about Arizona fruit in general. And from there, I went on and I went to Australia and got a degree in enology from University of Adelaide.
So for those of us that don't know you very well, you know, you're from here and you will go work for Kent for a summer. How did you wind up crossing the pond to Australia and studying there? Did you meet a girl? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, I had a buddy in Western Colorado who introduced me to Adelaide's program. I made wine in Grand Junction for a few years. So it's just one of the schools I applied to, along with UC Davis, Fresno State in California. And University of Adelaide is one of the best schools in the world, really, for viticulture enology.
And they're also I've learned today from Rod that they have a great support from the government as well when it comes to anything related to wine growing, right?
I believe that's right, and they have the Australian Wine Research Institute associated with the university, and at least when I was there, WRI was putting out 25% of the world's research in wine.
Jeez.
How long was the course? How long were you down there, Rob?
I was there for a year. So I was there studying, making wine. I was working in the cellars of Hewitson, where we were making Shiraz from Barossa Valley and McLaren Vale, Grenache, Mourvedre.
And then when did you come back to the States?
Came back to the States in 2004 and took a winemaking job in Grand Junction, Colorado.
What made you get into wine? Like, I remember I fell in love with Pinot, and I could be a very boring wine drinker because normally I revert back to Pinot. I'm like the most boring guy ever. But when was the moment that you went, this is for me? Like, did you have a moment? It's not a moment really, but I think it's
well, back at CSU in Fort Collins, I started with beer. So I was, at that time, Colorado was putting out, that was the beginning of the microbrew scene. So I started tasting all these different qualities in beer, and soon my attention turned to wine, and I started learning about the science of winemaking. And I was always going back and forth between art classes and science classes in college, so I just thought winemaking was a great way to combine everything together. I started drinking wine and taking some wine classes in Colorado, and the first two varieties I really that I fell in love with were Syrah and Riesling. They're two of my favorite varieties today.
So you came back in 2004 from Australia. And back to Colorado, right?
Hmm.
And then you worked there for a while?
I went back to Colorado. I was a winemaker at Two Rivers Winery from 2004 to 2008, and worked with vineyards from 4,700 feet in elevation up to 6,000 feet in elevation. So they're some of the highest vineyards in the U.S. The climate does have some similarities to Arizona in that way. But I worked with Bordeaux varieties. Syrah and Riesling did really well in Colorado.
How did Gigondas come into the picture?
Again, going back to Syrah and Riesling, two of my favorite varieties, I decided I needed to go work in the old world. It's something I always wanted to do, and I just started applying to wineries in France, and came down to, I was choosing between Zinhumbricht and Alsace and Saint Côme and the Rhone. And I almost ended up in Alsace, actually, but the last minute decided I got to go to the Rhone and make wine in Gigondas.
So what, at what capacity? Were you just a cellar rat or doing whatever they wanted you to do, or what was your...
Louis Barrault is who I worked for, and he called me his flying winemaker. So
Why
I
flying?
he would hire an international vintage winemaker each year. So flying winemaker is a term for someone who flies from continent to continent to make wine.
That sounds pretty
Yeah.
hoity-toity,
Yeah.
right? Like you have a personal jet or something flying around the world making wine. If you can encapsulate that experience in 1 year, what can you say? So you don't have to tell us about the whole year, but what was that like for you?
In France,
Uh-huh.
it was incredible. Saint Côme Cellars, the original winery building at the property, goes back to Roman times. So there was a section of the winery that was 2,000 years old and had fermentation vats carved out of the stone. So just the history there was amazing.
Wow.
And the fruit we were working with came from 100-plus-year-old Grenache vines. They're all vines that predated phylloxera. It was pretty incredible.
Was language at all a challenge, Rob?
What was that?
Language? Was there a language barrier? Do you speak French or did he speak English?
Louis does speak English, and his wife is from England, so that really helped. I don't speak very well. I don't speak French very well, so